Hi there, this is Shauna from the Foil Fox, and I'm here on the Paper Tray Ink and Ink to Paper YouTube channel, and I'm sharing a really great stamp and die set. It's brand new. It's called Dad's Time. It's a little mini. It has the barbecue, golf club, tie, and wrench. Great motifs for a birthday or for any masculine event. This one is for Father's Day, and then it has a matching die set to cut out those little goodies. I'm also going to be using some of the Nifty Plaid. This is one of my very favorite background stamps. It just makes a really nice crisp background. And then I'm using stitch die. Often this is accompanied with a border die, but I don't want a border. I want just to have the stitch lines, and that's what this will create. I'll also be using some white cardstock. And then I'll be using some craft, a panel of craft, and a panel of dark indigo. These are all Paper Tray ink papers. And then a white card base that's an A2 that I have folded into an easel type card. So I'm going to start out with this stitch die and the dark indigo. And I'm going to just center this right onto my A2 card base. I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine so you can see it just has the stitch lines on there. And I'm going to take the card base and I'm going to use some double stick tape and apply it to the back of it and then stick it down onto the front of the card base. This is going to be a very easy card to make, but I think that it's a very handsome one. So I hope that you enjoy it throughout. And so you can see here's the little stitch lines. And I really like that kind of detailing. And now I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to take the craft card panel, and I've mounted my Nifty Plaid into my stamp positioner, and I'm using Fresh Snow, which is a white ink. You can use any white ink you like. This happens to be a very nice one. This is Paper Tray Inks Fresh Snow. I do find with white ink though that you do need to stamp it several times just to get that really crisp pattern. And then once that's done, I'm going to take that out and I'm going to cut around it. I'm going to cut it to 3.5 by 4 3/4 because I want it to fit right inside those stitch lines that you see on the dark indigo. But before I mount it in there, I'm going to take a 2-inch circle here and I'm going to center it left to right, but a little bit high of center from top to bottom. I've put some, with that cut out, I've put some foam tape on there, and now I have a piece of white card stock that's going to just be mounted, not so that it's so big that you can see it peek out from the edges of the craft Nifty Plaid, but rather just to cover that circle. I'm going to peel off the release paper from the foam tape, and I'm going to just center that down. So that done, I'm going to set that aside, and now I'm going to work on the barbecue. So I'm just taking this stamp, or this die, excuse me, and I'm going to cut out all these pieces because I just want to use it as a holder in the negative space. You've seen me do this before. I do also still have the golf club and the wrench and the tie that I can use for another occasion. But for now, I'm going to take some repositionable tape onto the negative part. That's going to be my little holder in my stamp positioner. And I'm going to put the cutout of the barbecue back in its little place. And then I'm going to take the stamp, the coordinating stamp, and I'm going to make sure that it has perfect placement and stick it to my door. Now this is why I do it. I want perfect placement. Now I thought I was going to use True Black, but I'm going to switch to an alcohol ink friendly ink. This is My Favorite Things Extreme Hybrid. And I'm going to stamp this a couple of times. That's the besides getting perfect placement, I also want to be able to stamp it a couple of times, and that's why I put it into a stamp positioner. with that done, I'm going to take that out and I can set that aside. And you can see there's a stamp that you can color that looks like a Pac-Man. You can color the barbecue, but I'm going to use a few Copic markers because I think that I want to put a few highlights in there so it looks a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to be using some reds and some grays, but you can use any color scheme that you would like, or you can use the stamp as I mentioned. And I'm going to start out with the grays. I have C1, C3, and C5 I'm going to be using of the grays. So just a little bit of shading in the areas that I wanted a little bit darker. I do always start from light and then go to dark. That gives me an opportunity to just see, just how dark I want to go. This is the C5. And then I'm going to go back with the C1 and just highlight a little bit of those areas where I don't want it to be so dark. And then I'm going to do the same technique with the reds. I'm going to start with this R01 and I'm going to do the entire kettle part of the barbecue in the light, and then the same thing with this R32. I'm going to color the whole thing. And now I'm going to just go around the edges and then in the center with the darker colors. This one is the R32. And again, I'm going around just around the edges and then in the center part, leaving some little areas for highlights, for it to be a little bit lighter so that it looks like the sun is glistening off of this red enamel kettle part of my barbecue. This is the R39, which is the darkest color. And I'm using that around the edges and in the center. Then I'll go back with my lighter ones just to really accent those highlight areas a little bit more. Now this is the one place that I do more fiddling. I like to see how it comes along, so I do a little bit at a time, and then I like going back and forth just to give it a little bit more definition and a little bit more color, a little more intensity usually also. But I go from light to dark and then back to using my light. So there is my little barbecue. He's so cute. And I put some foam tape on the back of him and I'm going to mount him right into the center. I don't know if you can see the dimensions, but with the craft plaid popped up and then now the barbecue popped up, it really gives it a nice statement. Now, the only thing left to do is to put a sentiment, and there's a Happy Father's Day sentiment in this stamp set, so it's really has everything you need. I've mounted some pure poppy paper. These are all paper tray ink papers, and I have liberally treated it with some anti-static powder. And now I've mounted that Happy Father's Day onto the door, inked it with VersaFine ink, Versamark ink, sorry. That is a sticky clear ink. I'm going to stamp it twice so that I get a really good impression. And now, because this ink is sticky, I can sprinkle on the white embossing powder and it'll stick everywhere where that lettering is. Now, just to make sure there aren't any little errant pieces of white embossing powder, because it really show up on the red if it is in the wrong place, I use a tiny brush and brush those away, and then use my once that's done, use my my heat gun to melt all that embossing powder. Now I'm going to just cut it into a strip so you see it here. I put some foam tape onto the back. And that's all that I need to do. This is all done, and I think it makes a very handsome card for any man. It's great for Father's Day, as this one is, or for birthday, or any occasion for a man. I also did it in another motif, just so you can see it. This one is with the golf club, and I did it in the blacks and whites with the black background and a white card base with the black stamped nifty plaid. I hope you really enjoyed this project. It was a real fun one and an easy one, and gives a great big impact. I hope you try it. And I hope you give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And then pop over to blog.inktopaper.com and check out all the inspiration there. And then also go to foilfox.com. We have a complete supply list, lots of close-ups, and then all of the goodies that it takes to make this card. I hope you enjoyed it, like I said, and I will see you next time. Bye.